So today we're going to solve problem 2413, smallest even multiple. I'm not really feeling up to the task today, so I'm going to approach a pretty simple, easy, intuitive problem. Just for those of you who are curious, you can usually get a better indication of how difficult a problem is just by giving its acceptance to submission rate, right? There's only 8,000 people who approach this problem who were unable to solve it out of the 68,000. So that's a pretty good indicator that this problem is probably very easy, right? Because sometimes these easy classifications can be a little misleading, but that's just a side note. So let's go ahead and get right into this problem. Given a positive integer n, return the positive integer that is a multiple of both 2 and of n. So what does it mean for a number to be a multiple of another number? Well, that would mean that for a number x to be a multiple of 2 and of n, what would that mean for that number x? Well, x would have to be mod n and equal 0, and x mod 2 would have to equal 0, right? Mod is the remainder, right? Because if something is a multiple of something else, you can divide out that thing, right? If I have 6 equals 2 times 3. So when I mod that by 2, right, there's a 2 factor that gets erased, so you can definitely divide it out and you get 0. And if you have 6 equals, and if you mod it by 3, likewise, right, you get 0. Why? Because there's a factor of 2 and 3 that makes 6. So 6 is a multiple of 2 and 3. Okay? So really, when something's a multiple, it's basically just saying, you know, what can you, a product of what can be used to create that number, right? So for 6, it's a product of 2 times 3, right? You take 2 times 3, you get 6. So that means that 6 is a multiple of 2, and 6 is a multiple of 3, okay? So for this example, 6, for example, right, if we wanted to say, okay, what's the smallest number, positive number, that is a multiple of both 2 and n? So if n equals 6, well, 6 is definitely a multiple of 6, right? 6 multiplied by 6 equals 0. Why? Because 6 can be equals 6 times 1. So since there's a 6 that I can use to get a product to return 6, then that means 6 is a multiple of 6, right? You can remove the 6 that you put into 6, so you can divide it out. So that means 6 mod 6 would be equal to 0. But you can also represent 6 as 3 and 2. So 3 mod 2, 3 times 2. So since 6 equals 3 times 2, it's a multiple of 2 because you can remove this 2 and you'll get 0, right? So I guess the first thing you have to do is say, well, you know, if the number is a multiple of 2, right, you don't need to find what this multiple is. But if you mod the number by 2 and you get 0, that means that it's a multiple of 2. So if the number, right, n mod 2 equals 0, well then, if it mods 2 and it equals 0, well, it also mods itself when it equals 0. So it itself is the smallest positive integer that is a multiple of both 2 and n. So we would just return n itself. Otherwise, what about 5? Well, in order for 5 to be a multiple of 2, that would mean 5 minus 2 has to equal 0. Well, you can represent 5 as what? Well, 5 equals 5 times 1, and that's it. I can't say 5 equals 2.5 times 2 or something, right? It has to be 2 integers. So we can't use 5, right? Because 5 is not a multiple of 2. 5 mod 2 does not equal 0. So since this case isn't true, we can't use the number itself. So what is the smallest number, including 5, that will be a multiple of 2? Well, in order for something to be a multiple of 2, it has to have a 2 as a factor. So it has to divide 5, and it has to be a multiple of 5 and a multiple of 2. So that's just taking 5. Well, the smallest thing would be just to double 5, and you get 10. All right. So 5 times 2 equals 10. Now this is a multiple of 2 because there's a 2 factor, and it's a multiple of 5 because there's a 5 factor. So if it's already divisible by 2, you're done. You can just use the number of itself. If it's not, you're going to have to use 2 times the number. Okay. And then what we'll do to make this just a little bit better, we'll say return n if n mod 2 equals 0. Otherwise, we'll return n times 2. And that's how you do a one-line solution where I'm from. And there you go. And this is going to have huge variance because it's a very simple problem. And yeah. So what's the runtime? And what's the space complexity? So n is n. Okay, so time is constant, right? Because I just take the number and I just make a comparison. So this is a constant comparison, and then I just return 2 times that. Space, well, this is also just constant, right? Because I'm not creating any additional variables. I'm just making 2 simple little checks that independent of n. That's all I do. So very simple problem, very easy, very approachable. I hope you guys at least learn some intuition about how to solve these problems. Thank you.